The topic for 8th session of the convention is Common Ground to Face Common Challenges, Strengthening Alliances to Counter China's Influence. I would like to request Honorable Member of Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile, Ms. Tenzin Choezin, to chair the session. I would like to request the speakers, Mr. Wang Dai, Vice Chairman, Federation for a Democratic China, Mr. Afumeto Ratip, Chairman of Japan Uyghur Association, Mr. Olenut Daiin, Vice Chairman of the Southern Mongolia Congress, Mr. Alrich Lee, Speaker from Hong Kong Democracy Council, Ms. Lin Shingi, Taiwanese human rights activist. The stage is yours.
Should we begin? Should we begin? Yes. Should we begin? Tashi Delek, and good morning, everyone. We've had some really interesting discussions yesterday focusing on the critical situations inside Tibet, China's disinformation, and the transnational repression. I now welcome you all to this important panel on common grounds to face common challenges, strengthening alliances to counter CCP's influence. It is an honor for me to share this stage with personalities who are at the front lines of their movements, who continues to resist repression with courage, hope, and resilience. It is an established fact that the Chinese Communist Party has long enforced and continues to enforce its repressive policies in Tibet, East Turkestan, Southern Mongolia, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and even within China.
Yes.
Beyond its borders, the CCP's expansionist agenda is equally alarming, with its aggressive claims in the South China Sea to its strategic ventures like the Belt and Road Initiative and String of Pearls. CCP's ambitions are global and is far-reaching. What is just as concerning is that their state-controlled narratives, disinformation campaigns, and propaganda machines are now operating far beyond China's borders. As this influence spreads, it is becoming increasingly clear that building alliances is no longer just a strategy, it is a necessity. This panel is a space for us to reflect on where each movement stands and how does our struggle intersect, and more importantly, moving forward, how can we form a more powerful and meaningful alliance to hold China accountable on the global stage. Coincidentally, today happens to be the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre in China. And I've just, while talking to Lin, one of the panelists, realized that it would be more appropriate to also call it the 35th May. And I'd also request later on Lin to sort of delve deeper into why we call it or term it as the 35th of May. However, the same year, on March 8th, the PRC government imposed martial law and deployed troops in Lhasa, where many Tibetans were killed and detained, followed by a brutal crackdown. I pray and acknowledge that they sacrificed their lives for freedom and dignity against a repressive regime. Let us now begin by hearing from our 5 esteemed panelists, each carrying the weight and the light of their people's struggle. Our panelists will be allotted 7 minutes each, followed by a question and answer session from the floor. Now, without stretching further, please allow me to introduce our first panelist for the session, Mr. Wang Dai. Wang Dai, born in Harbin, China, is a Chinese democracy activist based in Japan. He took part in the 1989 pro-democracy movement and moved to Japan after the Tiananmen Square crackdown. A longtime member of the Federation for a Democratic China, FDC, he has held key leadership roles in various overseas Chinese pro-democracy organizations. Mr. Wang Dai, please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Wang Dai, Vice Chair of the Federation for Democratic China. 36 years ago, after the Tiananmen incident, but 36 years ago, I moved to Japan. And this year and today marks the 36th year or anniversary after such the Tiananmen incident. And on this day, June 4th, this marks the 36th anniversary after the Tiananmen Square protest. And during the past 36 years, China has undergone great changes, but still suffers under the sanctions of the junta or the authoritarian regime. After the 1994 Tiananmen Square protest, the West countries imposed economic sanctions on the China's Communist Party of China government, with hope that the Communist Party would carry out political reforms and bring democracy and freedom back to China. However, as time went by, the policies of that West took a turn, or the unintended turn, and eventually China joined WTO, the World Trade Organization. This decision resulted in the rapid growth of China's economy, making China the factory of the world. And unfortunately, that also further solidifying the status of a China Communist Party monopoly. Despite the rapid economic growth, Chinese Communist Party did not carry out political reforms at all, but continued repression on the dissident and also suppressed freedom of speech and religion, and implemented genocide policies against Uyghur, Tibetans, and South Mongolians. These acts are not only an infringement on the Chinese people, but also a challenge to the fundamental human rights of all mankind. At the same time, the Communist Party has promoted an expansionist and invasive policy of precision in foreign affairs, threatening and bullying neighboring countries. It also engages in threats, negotiations, and rebellion against neighboring countries. That the Communist Party has become an evil wall that stands in the way of all righteous nations and people who seek freedom, democracy, human rights, and national self-determination. the existence of this wall is not only a major obstacle to the Chinese people's right to self-determination, but also hinders the world from pursuing a path of peace and prosperity. At this critical juncture, we must remember the words of former U.S. President Ronald Reagan said near the Berlin Wall to the people. Tear down this wall. These are not only the words of the Cold War symbol, but it's also our strongest appeal to the Communist Party today. So let us join hands, transcending national and ethnic boundaries, and unite all the forces of justice to crush this evil wall together, to pave the way for the future, and to fight for freedom and justice for the people of China and all mankind. This is our mission. Let us call on all nations and people who share common values such as freedom, democracy, respect for human rights, and the rule of law to rise up and stand up against this oppressive regime. Together, we will work to advance history and create a future full of hope for all. Only when this evil wall is crushed and taken down can true freedom and democracy take root in China and have a positive impact on the future of the world. Let us all crush the walls of the evil Chinese Communist Party. Let us fight for freedom and justice. That's all. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Mr. Wang Dai, for your powerful presentation. Mr. Wang Dai, your insight into China's pro-democracy struggle and how, despite years of persecution, the movement still standing tall and has not faltered but grown in strength has only sort of inspired a lot of other, it transpired as a sort of inspiration around the world, especially for the oppressed territories under the authoritarian regime. And I'd like to reiterate, even though we do not share the same sort of movement histories and identities, I think we sort of share a commitment to human dignity, justice, and freedom. So thank you so much, Mr. Wang Dai. Moving on to our next panelist for the session is Mr. Afumeto Retepu, born in East Turkestan, is a leading Uyghur activist and chairman of the Japan Uyghur Association. Since moving to Japan in 2002, he has been a prominent voice advocating for the rights and freedom of the Uyghur people, frequently engaging with media and publishing on the East Turkestan issue. Yes.
皆様、こんにちは。
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Afumetto. I am the president and CEO of the NPO Japan Uyghur Association. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Japan. And the theme of this session, strengthening the alliance to counter Chinese influence, is an important issue, not only for people under China's colonial rules, such as Uyghur, Tibetans and Mongolians, but also for international community that shares democratic value, including Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Japan.
国際社会が一致して直面している重大な課題であると考えます。もちろん、
While,
民主派の中国
of
人グルー
course,
プとの連携
collaboration
も
with
非常に重要なん
pro-democracy
ですが、
China groups
ウイグル人の
is
立場から
important
申し上げ
from
ま
the
すと、
perspective of Uyghurs.
私たち
I believe
同祖国
it is important
東
to
パキスタンにおいて
acknowledge that China's role in our homeland, East Turkestan, is colonial domination, to recognize the ongoing Uyghur genocide and to clearly state our opposition to it. That is very important, I believe. China no longer can be countered by just one ethnicity or one nation. It is becoming an uncontrollable giant monster now. We must recognize that the current China has been shaped by the economic and technological support of Japan and other Western countries. And I believe it is time for the world to show concrete solidarity with the Uyghurs, Tibetans, and others who are being erased by this China. I sincerely hope that this international conference will serve as an opportunity to strengthen such collaboration. Currently, the Uyghurs are being forcibly detained simply for their ethnic identity, coerced into abandoning their unique identity and pledging loyalty to Chinese Communist Party. Their distinct culture and beliefs are denied, and even their right to receive education in Uyghur language is being stripped away. They are subject to forced labor, coerced sterilization, placed under unimaginable surveillance, and their peaceful daily lives are shattered by psychological torture. So the survival of their ethnic groups is in precarious state now. Numerous investigative reports, testimonies, and leaked internal documents provide evidence supporting this, and the U.S. government has recognized it as genocide with the intent to destroy people. Additionally, parliaments from around the world, including European Parliament, have adopted resolutions declaring the Uyghur genocide. The United Nations, while taking considerable care to accommodate China, has acknowledged in a report that China's actions against Uyghurs may constitute the commission of international crimes, including crimes against humanity. However, unfortunately, Uyghur genocide is still ongoing. Most of the signatory countries of the Genocide Convention prioritize their immediate economic interest with China and have abandoned their responsibility to prevent Uyghur genocide, unfortunately. The United Nations has denied the investigation report from the UNHCR, and China is attempting to close the matter without an independent international investigation taking place. However, many people who were taken away in large-scale forced detention since 2017 are still missing. Among them are many prominent intellectuals and business people who have dedicated themselves to preserving Uyghur culture. Additionally, there are still missing individuals among my own relatives. To turn a blind eye to the Uyghur genocide can only be seen as encouraging China and contributing to acceleration of the genocide. In particular, the issue of forced labor, which is part of the Uyghur genocide, is not only a problem for Uyghur people, but also a global issue. The investigation report released by the Japan Uyghur Association last month confirmed that 30 Japanese companies and 4 Chinese companies operating in Japan are involved in the issue of forced labor concerning the Uyghurs in some form. This suggests that about 83% of the subjects surveyed are involved in Japan's market and supply chain, indicating a very high percentage of complicity in state-led forced labor, and there is no time to waste in implementing measures to protect the honor of Japanese companies and uphold Japanese values. I hope concrete actions will be taken. I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate that if the world allowed China to destroy the Uyghurs, it is only a matter of time before the model of violence is exported, becoming a significant threat to surrounding regions and the entire world. Let all unite and do all the best for the Uyghurs and Tibetans in Japan. We would like to reiterate we shouldn't be bystanders. We need to work together to prevent these actions from being exported to the rest of the world. It is only a matter of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Afumeto Ratip, for your heartfelt remarks on the genocide against the Uyghur people, the extensive detention and genocide against your people, and how you continue, despite all these hardship, to raise awareness for the Uyghur people's plight and the struggle to mobilize international action for East Turkestan. You've also spoken on how, only by standing together in solidarity across communities and borders can we effectively push back against the rising tide of repression. Additionally, as Mr. Wang Dai has also mentioned, Afumetto, you've said that playing a part in building the economical ties with CCP will result in participating in CCP's designs to repress oppressed territories, including Uyghur, Tibet, Hong Kongers, and all the other oppressed territories. With that, I would like to move on to the next third panelist of the session. However, I'd appreciate if you could also focus on, as cross-movement allies, how can we move beyond the symbolic solidarities and form a more practical and coordinated strategies, whether through legal channels or by building economic pressure or through international advocacy to sort of meaningfully challenge Beijing's impunity and hold it accountable on a global stage. Let me now please introduce to you all our third panelist for the session. Mr. Olhonud Daiin is born in Inner Mongolia in 1966, is a prominent Southern Mongolian activist based in Japan. He co-founded the Mongolian Liberal Union Party and currently serves as its representative. He is also executive vice chairman of the Southern Mongolian Kurultai and editor-in-chief for Free Mongolia. Through his writings and activisms, he advocates for the rights and freedom of Southern Mongolians under Chinese rule. Please.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you
紹介
very
いた
much
だきました。
for the
南
introduction.
モンゴル出身のアルファメット大臣と申します。 南モンゴルクリル大所属であります。日本を拠点に世界中でこの南モンゴルの現状を訴えることを進めております。今回のこの 貴重な時間いただきまして、主催者側
working as an
皆さ
activist
んに本当に感謝
and
申し上げ
to
ながら
advocate
こうい
for
う
the
時間
cause of
を利用して
South Mongolia. Thank you very much for
私たち
giving
南モンゴルの
me
現状を
this
伝えていきた
valuable
いなと
time
思います。
slot.
チベッ
I
ト
would like to
とウイ
appreciate
グルとちょっ
this
と
to
違
the
っ
host,
て
and I would
こ
like
の
to talk
南モ
about
ン
the
ゴルのこと
situation
現状
facing
実態
us
どうなってい
and
るか
people
という
of
ことは
South
いま
Mongolia.
だにまだ
So
世界中であま
different
り
from Tibet,
知ら
different
れ
from
てない
Uyghur.
とこ
What
ろ
is the
で
current
もあります
situation in South
ただ
Mongolia
この
is not
真
very
実と
much
しては
known yet in the world. However,
性
in
質とし
terms
ては
of
チベッ
its
トウイグルと全
truth,
く同じ
the
で言って
nature
も
of
過言
what's
ではない
happening in the
ということ
situation
だから
in South
私この時
Mongolia
間
is
を利用
exactly
し
the
て
same as what's
現
happening
状を
in
伝えていきたいと思
Tibet
います。
and
よ
Uyghur.
ろし
So
くお
I
願
would
いし
like
ます。
to
で、私の
emphasize on that
報
and
告
then
内容として
give you
は、
some
この
further detail about
南
the
モンゴルで
reality in
今ちょ
Southern
うど
Mongolia.
進
In
行中
Southern
の
Mongolia,
モンゴル語の
currently
抹殺、教
the
育現場のモンゴル語授業
massacre
の廃
of the
止、
Mongolian
禁止などに
language,
対して
the prohibition
もう一つの
of
内容は
Mongolian language
南モン
in
ゴルでの環境
education
破壊、
as well as
表現のその
in the classroom and then also the
もう一つ最後に人権弾圧、
desertification
そ
as
れ
well
は
as the
南モンゴルの
environmental
領内で
destruction
の
in
人権
the
弾圧、
Southern
もう一つ
Mongolia
はその
and
南モン
also
ゴル人の
the
国境を越えた人権弾圧、
human rights
そういうところはウイグル
infringement
とチベッ
and
ト
then
と
also
香
the
港などと全く一緒だと思い
human
ます。
rights
それではこ
repression,
の
which
地
is
図で
a
よく
cross-border, which is,
分か
I
りや
believe,
すい
the
と思い
same
ますけれど、
for
こ
Uyghur,
の
Hong
墓で
Kong,
塗られてい
Tibet,
る
and for
民
Southern
間の地図
Mongolia.
ですね。
So please look
中
at
国共産党政権
the
のいわゆるチモン
map
ゴル自
on
治
the
区、
right-hand side, and this is the
これは
so-called Inner
私たち
Mongolia,
の主張
Southern
してい
Mongolia.
る
This is
南モンゴルであ
our
ります。
territory,
というのは
Southern
左側
Mongolia.
の地図でも分
And
か
then
りま
as
す
you
よう
can
に、そ
see
の
on the
上に
left-hand
北の方に
side
は
map on
モンゴル
in the
国
north
がありま
part,
すね。
there
そ
is
の
Mongolia,
南
the
の方にありますか
nation
ら、
state
私たちは
Mongolia, and
正
we
確に
are
言う
at
と
the
適切な
southern tip
表現
of
はや
that
っぱり
Mongolia.
南モ
So
ンゴル
we
ではありま
are
す。
Southern
だから
Mongolia.
私た
That
ちは
is the
南モンゴル
accurate
と言ってるんです
naming
ね。
of
内モンゴル
our
ではないということ。
territory.
で、この
So
最
this
近
is not
2020年か
inner
ら始まっ
Mongolia,
た
but
その
in
二
Southern
言語
Mongolia.
教育
And then in
という
2020,
中
it
国の
started
プロジェクトですね。
that
それは
the
チベットにもウイグルにも全く同
Chinese
じようなことが
language and education project, and
行っております。
that
南
is
モンゴルでは
applied
こ
in
の
the same manner
こ
to
のことは
Uyghur as well as to Tibet.
2020年から新しい
And
言
in
語教
Southern
育という
Mongolia
形
in
で現れたけど、
2020,
実は南モンゴルでは
the
少な
so-called
くとも
bilingual
こういう
education in a new
中国
format
共産党
has
政
got
権からや
started.
っていることは
But
2
at
回
least
3回は行ってきたん
in
ですね。それ
the
は最後の
Southern
形と
Mongolia
なって
CCP
来
has
てい
done
るん
the
です。
same
その
twice or
中
third
は
time, and this is the
母
last
語
and
と
the
か
latest one.
その
And then
母
what is
語で行
included
っ
in
て
this
たモン
program
ゴル語
is
の教
that
育を全部中止して中国
education
語
which
で行
was
う
used
と
to
いうこと
be
ですね。
given in our mother tongue,
そ
Mongolian
の中で
language,
は
is now banned completely,
共
and
産
then
党政権
the
の
whole education
公
is
式
to
な
be done,
文献では
must
そうい
be
う
done in
国語
Chinese
を
language,
道
in
徳と
Mandarin.
か法治
And
政治ですね
in
LFC な
the
どを
textbooks,
だんだんゆっくり変えていくっていうそ
documentations
の
of CCP,
文書で
it
は
is
はっきり
decided
と書かれていま
that
すけれども、実際は
and
そうではないんで
explicitly
すね。
said that
それは
gradually
全部
our
今
historical
2025
documents
年時
and
点では
the
全て
textbooks
が
will
変わ
be
ってこの今年の
changed
大学の
gradually
受験は全て
to
中国
Mandarin,
語
but
で
it is
行
not
う
the
という
reality
ことです。
because as of
だから
2025,
分かり
all
ま
of
す
the
ように
documents have
こ
already
れは
been
全
changed
部
completely to
中
Chinese
国語
language
になります
Mandarin,
ね。この写
and
真ではそ
all
の
the
小学校で行ってい
education
ること
in the
で
universities
中
and the
国のこの
schools
プロパガンダっ
must
てい
be
うのは
done
ここでよく
in
わかります。こ
Mandarin,
の先
and
生は
the
もうすで
pictures
に
are
中国
in
人になっています。
elementary
た
school,
だ着てる
and
服
then
はモンゴル
the
の
teacher
着物で
is
す
a
ね。
Chinese person, but then
中国人の顔をしている
the teacher
中国
is
語で話してい
dressed
る。こ
in
こ
a
は
Mongolian
ビデオから撮った写真で
clothes.
すけれども、
And
す
then
べて中国語で
this
話
is
して、
an
でまた
screenshot from a video,
予
but
約
the
してくだ
teacher
さいって
has
いう
a Chinese person's face, and
保護者も学生たちも
all the
参加してい
people
all parents and guardians and students, pupils are supposed to speak also in Chinese. And what is done actually in the classroom? You can see that in the picture on the right-hand side. This is a second grade pupil, and the pupil was physically punished, and 80% of the child's ear was torn apart because the child was unable to return the homework in
Mandarin Chinese language. So this is the sad reality which is happening in this cultural cleansing policy. And it is not limited to this particular place in southern Mongolia. It is happening on a broad basis and in the whole region area of southern Mongolia. This is brainwashing, and then the CCP is doing a propaganda saying that Mongolia and the Chinese people are in a very happily living family, and then you can see that the Mongolian language has been erased and then replaced by the printing of Mandarin. And in terms of environmental destruction, Chinese have been aggressively developing the environment, and then 1,536 mines of coal and iron ore do exist, and out of 1,536, 1,257 of them, the mines, are substandards. And there is an open-air mining, and also the desertification, you can see, is happening as a result of environmental damaging. So this is a brainwashing and a cultural massacre. Like in Tibet and like in Uyghur, in the southern Mongolia, this is the so-called enhancing the culture, and the Mongolian culture is wanted to be erased, and this is under the control of Xi Jinping. And that was also covered in the Chinese newspaper. And so this is the level of cross-border human rights repression by China is happening. This is in front of the Chinese embassy in Japan, and then there are protests against our activities and saying that we are divisionists, for example. And what is very tough is what happened last year, and to our members of the southern Mongolia, there are officers from Chinese police coming to visit them, to threat them. And then also this also is spreading to the Mongolia per se as well. So over many years, southern Mongolia has been aggressed by China, and then the characteristics of a human rights violation in southern Mongolia are listed here. So the people's aggression, and also the political repression, and brainwashing education, land issue, environmental destruction, and the land farming being banned, school education with the banning of mother tongue education, and also the cross-border human rights violation.
Thank you, Mr. Olhonud Daiin,
Thank you very
for
much.
enlightening the audience when it comes to bringing the light and plight of people in southern Mongolia who continues to suffer cultural and political repression by the Chinese colonial designs. As you've spoken, from controlling Mongolian language, attacking identities, to mining in Mongolia, southern Mongolia, to human rights violations and environmental destructions. It is really deeply saddening to hear about what is happening to the culture and the languages of each distinct territories. Similarly, in Tibet as well, at least 1 million Tibetans children are separated from their families and placed in state-run colonial boarding schools, according to a 2023 UN report. These very importantly goes on to say that the intervention of the international community is crucial, and how keeping a silence will only embolden CCP's design. So with this, we are moving on to our next panelist. Our fourth panelist is Mr. Alrich Lee. Alrich Lee is a prominent Hong Kong pro-democracy activist and founder of Lady Liberty Hong Kong, LLHK. Since 2019, he has played a key role in shaping the movement's international identity, advocating for Hong Kong's autonomy and civil symbolic resistance art and organizing the 2024 Japan-Hong Kong Democracy Summit to bolster regional solidarity with Hong Kong's democratic cause. I request Alrich Lee to, if you could also delve into how we could, as part of the movement, as cross-movement allies, how can we move forward in your presentation?
Honorable members of the Parliament, distinguished delegates, and dear friends from around the world, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today at this year's World Parliamentarian Convention on Tibet. It is a great honor to stand here today, especially on this day, June 4th, a day that carries deep meaning for all of us who have lived through and inherit the legacy of political oppression. June 4th marks the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. On this day, 36 years ago, thousands of peaceful students and citizens in Beijing rose up to demand democracy, transparency, and reform. And on that day, the Chinese Communist Party answered them not with dialogues, but with tanks and bullets. The massacre was just not a national tragedy. It was a turning point in history. It taught authoritarian regimes that they could kill without consequences, and it taught generations of Chinese people that truth could be bared under fear. But the truth is resilience. It continues to live on in memory, in candlelight vigils, in testimonies, and in our voices here. In Hong Kong, we remembered June 4th every year by gathering in Victoria Park to mourn the dead, honor their courage, and keep their legacy alive. Those gatherings were peaceful, they were lawful, and they were profoundly moving. But in 2020, under the national security law, these vigils have been banned, the organizers imprisoned. Among those still detained is Chow Han-tong, a human rights lawyer and one of the core members of the Hong Kong Alliance in support the patriotic democratic movements in China. She is now imprisoned for the simple act of encouraging people to remember the victims of Tiananmen Square, something that should be a moral obligation, not a criminal offense. Another is Jimmy Lai, a publisher and democracy activist who had been behind bars since 2020. His only crime was to speak out for those for peaceful political change and advocates for religious freedom. These are not isolated cases. These are symptoms of a deeper crisis, a system that treats memory as a threat and humanity as an obstacle. This is the reason that I'm especially grateful for the WPCTs being held in Tokyo for the first time. Here in Japan, we still have the freedom to speak together and to remember. And by bringing this convention to East Asia, we shine a much-needed light on Tibet's struggle in a region that's increasingly aware of the danger posed by China's expanding influence. This is not just about Tibet, not just about Hong Kong, it is about defending the very principles that allowed societies to flourish, truth, justice, and freedom. As a Hong Konger, I feel a deep connection with the Tibetan cause. Just like Tibet, Hong Kong was promised autonomy under Chinese rule, and just like Tibet, that promise was broken. But in the face of loss, the Tibetan people have given us a role model of dignity and resilience. After more than 60 years of occupation exile, Tibetan communities not have only survived, they have preserved their identity, their language and their religion, and their moral clarity. For us in the Hong Kong diaspora, you are more than an ally, you are our teachers. You have shown us the resistance is not just possible, it is also sustainable, and it can be peaceful. We too believe in peaceful resistance and pluralism. We do not fight to replace one regime with another, or to defeat people we call our enemies. We fight to uphold the shared dignity of all people, Han, Tibetan, Uyghurs, South Mongolians, Taiwanese, Hong Kongers, and beyond. As China continues to exert influence around the world, we must stand firm, not with hatred, but with integrity, not by building walls, but by building values. Our goal is not to crush the regime that oppresses us. Our goal is to prevent others from suffering the same fate. What we have learned through our pain about courage, compassion, and non-violence must be shared with the world. We must become navigators of freedom and peace, not out of revenge, but out of responsibility. Yesterday, we honored the upcoming 8th anniversary of the death of Liu Xiaobo, the 2010 Nobel Peace Prize laureate. Even after years in prison, facing death, he famously said, "I have no enemies." This idea may sound impossible to those who have suffered, but it is in this impossibility that hope lives. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has also taught us that true change does not come from defeating others, but also from transforming ourselves. Hatred may give us strength in short term, but it would also destroy us in the long term. That's why I want to urge my fellow Hong Kongers and all those who live under oppression, let go of hatred, let go of aggression, and let go of the desire for revenge. Not only towards the regime that hurts you, but also towards within or your own community. Oppression breeds fear, suspicion, and division. But if we carry that forward into our movements, then we reproduce the very violence we seek to overcome. Instead, we must act with discipline, with love, and with clarity. Only then we can build a future that is not defined by what we suffered, but by what we give. Our common ground may be rooted in shared pain, but it also grows through our shared values, a deep commitment to non-violence, to dialogue, and to compassion. These are not just ideals, these are strategies for survival. And in this century of rising authoritarianism, this may be the only strategies that can save us. Let us carry this flame forward together, not as victims of the past, but as guardians of a freer, more humane future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alric. Thank you, Alric, for bringing into the mix a perspective of youth-led initiatives and also how a cross-movement alliance can work to achieve shared goals. You've also spoken about the importance of hosting the convention in East China in Japan, and it clearly sends out a clear message to the CCP how our causes are not isolated, they're intertwined, and in that very understanding lies our greatest strength, solidarity. I was just second guessing if I should share a small conversation which happened this morning while coming from our hotel room to the convention, the meeting hall here. I was talking with Mr. Makino-san, who is a former parliamentarian and a minister for Japan. And we were talking about all different things, and then he suddenly showed me the greeneries around and said, look at the greens, the beautiful tree, the green trees, the greenery around. And he said this was planted 60 years ago. So it might not sound relevant when I speak here, but it goes on to say that even if we're starting now, I'd like to believe that even if not immediately, in coming times we'll bear the fruit to relish for the hard work that we put collectively into the movements. With that, we are now headed towards the last, but not the least, our final panelist for the session, Ms. Lin Shingi. And I'm pleased to introduce to you all Ms. Lin, who has visited Dharamshala quite a few times. I met her last year in my office. We briefly spoke about the importance of cross-movement alliances, and we did not know that we'd meet here to talk in detail, in depth, about how we can explore more meaningful ways to counter CCP's influence. I introduce to you all Lin Shingi, a leading Taiwanese human rights activist and executive director of the Taiwan Alliance to End the Death Penalty since 2007, a founding member of both the Anti-Death Penalty Asia Network and the Human Rights Network for Tibet and Taiwan. She also serves on the steering committee of the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty, active since 1999. Lin has been at the forefront of judicial reform, abolition advocacy, and cross-movement solidarity efforts, particularly between Tibet and Taiwan. Ms. Lin, please.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to be here today, not just to speak, but to learn from all of you, and to think together about how we can take meaningful steps to push back against China's influence. I'm Lin Shingi, and I serve on the board of the Human Rights Network for Tibet and Taiwan. And we are a really small organization based in Taiwan. And I have only got 7 minutes, so instead of going big picture, I'd like to start from a very local, very personal perspective. And I did not directly talk about Taiwan's situation. I will talk about the Tibet movement in Taiwan instead. In Taiwan, the Tibet movement probably started around 1997 when His Holiness the Dalai Lama visited the very first time. Not long after that, the Tibet Religious Foundation of His Holiness the Dalai Lama was set up. And then in 2004, the very first March 10 Tibetan Uprising Day demonstration took place in Taipei. There were just 7 Tibetans there and about 3 times as many police officers. Even though the Tibetan population in Taiwan is quite small, we still have a few key Tibetan organizations like RTYC Taiwan and the Taiwan Tibet Welfare Association. And on the support side, we have got groups like Taiwan Friends of Tibet and SFT Taiwan. Those are Tibet Approach organizations. My own organization, the Human Rights Network for Tibet and Taiwan, was founded in 2016 by Zhashitsen La. A lot of you know him. And he was actually one of the original 7 Tibetans at that first March 10th demonstration back in 2004. Over the years, he has witnessed the growth of the movement, not just with more Tibetans and supporters showing up, but also with a wide range of NGOs from other sectors getting involved. How did it happen? Jashila and many Tibetans in Taiwan often say to us, "Thank you so much for supporting Tibet." But to be honest, we Taiwanese didn't quite agree that framing. You see, Tibet and Taiwan are 2 places facing some of the hardships, pressure and repression from China. Taiwan has learned so much from Tibet, and we have been deeply inspired by your courage, your brave, your everything. Tibet can help Taiwan too, yeah. So it already has. We didn't see ourselves only as a Tibetan support group. You could say we are also a Taiwan support group, right? So our name is the Human Rights Network for Tibet and Taiwan, and every word in the name matters. That's why and how more NGOs getting involved. Our board members all come from different NGOs across Taiwan. We bring together people working on the wide range of issues, united by a shared commitment to human rights and freedom. As I mentioned earlier, Human Rights Network for Tibet Taiwan is a very small organization. We are all volunteers, and we don't have our own research team to gather sought and accountable information about Tibet. That's why we really, rely heavily on international resources. We depends on the message and reports from CTA, the Tibetan Center for Human Rights and Democracy, the International Tibet Network, the Tibet Action Institute, and others. They are incredible value to us. And at the same time, within Taiwan, we focus on connecting people to issues. For example, we share information about Tibet's environmental crisis with local environmental NGOs. We talk to education groups about the boarding school system in Tibet. We let gender equality organization know that His Holiness the Dalai Lama is friendly and open-minded when it comes to LGBTQ+ issues, and many groups in Taiwan really care about it. Let me give a personal example. My main job is the executive director of the Taiwan Alliance to End the Death Penalty. When I learned that His Holiness the Dalai Lama against the death penalty, I felt such a strong connection to the Tibetan issue. For the Dalai Lama's 90th birthday, we are also putting this approach into action. Together with other NGOs in Taiwan, Human Rights Network is planning to an exhibition called from the snow range to the ocean of wisdom, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and human rights. Sorry, I just want to show you the photos. Okay, it follows the same idea, using human rights as a starting point to help people connect with Tibetan through universal values. In 2016, when Human Rights Network for Tibet and Taiwan was started, we had a delegation visit His Holiness in Dharamsala. He told us, Tibet is important, but so are other issues. China, Hong Kong, the Uyghur, the South Mongolia, China, human rights as a whole matter. That time, Freddie Lim, a lot of you know him, who had just been elected to Taiwan's parliament, was also with us. After returning to Taiwan, the Parliament Group for Tibet was founded, and the Human Rights Network for Tibet and Taiwan was one of the main forces making it happen. Since then, we have worked closely with members of Parliament. And this year, we have a new strategy. We are planning to form a cross-party Tibet support groups in local councils across Taiwan. By doing that, we hope to bring Tibet to the grassroots level, not just in Taipei, but across Taiwan. And as a minority in this conference, I really want to request all the parliamentarians should work closely with NGO together. And I think the more we connect, the stronger we are, and the more we act together, the harder we are to silence. So let's keep building the network, and not just for Tibet, for Taiwan, and for the freedom and for everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lin, for speaking about the developments of grassroots organizations in Taiwan under your leadership and within your organization that works collectively. And also speaking about the power of working together and how in the face of rising authoritarian influence and regime, coming together is the only way forward. We've also spoken about the new developments of cross-party alliance and how we can, by working together, we can form a more sort of stronger impact in terms of pressurizing CCP. Now, brushing through all the discussions that we've had now, there have been reflections on each movement, where it currently stands, and also there have been a number of appeals made to the international communities, particularly because we have a lot of parliamentarians in the room today. We hope that you take action against the abuses of human rights by the CCP. And I remember in the previous WPCT sessions similar to this panel on strengthening cross-movement alliances, there have been strong recommendations of having, in coming times, having roundtable discussions, of having even very minor but very impactful initiatives like exchange programs, so in order to sort of get to know each other and build a stronger coalition in coming times. With this, I'd like to leave it open for the floor to raise questions.
Thank you. And thank you very much for all your fantastic presentations and bringing together the core issues which are shared with Tibet in each of your representative nations this morning. I've been thinking about this for the last weeks, in fact, and what we as legislators can do. I'm a member of Parliament from the UK, have been for the last 10 years. So I just wanted to share a little bit of hope around the organisation known as the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, which was set up 5 years ago. Now, it's for lawmakers and by lawmakers, and there's many lawmakers in this room today. It's free to join, and the whole point of it is that we work together, cross-party, no party, on all the issues in order to address the threats and the rules-based and human rights systems that have been posed by the risk of China. The success in the last 5 years is actually documented, and you can have a look at through his website. So far, it's produced 1,819 interventions in parliaments across the world, 239 bills have been tabled, and 10 laws have been changed. So it's really important for us as lawmakers to work together through an organisation such as IPAC. His director is actually based in the UK. His name is Luke de Pulford. There are currently 290 lawmakers. It would be excellent today if we can take that number over 300 by simply joining. It also gives us the opportunity to have a WhatsApp group where we can share ideas. And what IPAC does is every week it gives a list of news articles, news reports that we can share online through our social media, whether it be on Tibet or Uyghurs or South Mongolia, Hong Kong or elsewhere. And it means we can talk with a collective voice. So I'm just reaching out today because I know we have a limited time, there's a lot of presentations, but IPAC for legislators at least is a real golden opportunity for us to speak on all of the issues that put to threat our democracies, our human rights and our way of life, both inside China and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So before we move on to hear the perspectives of our respective panelists, I think you've raised a very, very important question. The responsibility to make China accountable lies in the hands of the international community, and with your strong recommendations and suggestions as to how we can forge this coalition in moving forward, strengthening and not just ending the conversation today, but making it a beginning of a stronger and impactful and meaningful means to sort of hold China accountable. I think it'll be really interesting to hear from our panelists how they look onto this matter. Maybe we'll start with Mr. Wang Dai.
まずはですね、
First of all,
中国は今
now China,
邪悪な政権になってからですね、
well, once this evil administration has starting Mao to from Mao to Xi Jinping, that's been the authoritarian regime that's been in place in China. But then the Western countries, as I mentioned in my presentation,
どう見てもですね、西側諸国の対朝政策をですね、
the Western countries, the policy immediately after the Tiananmen were kind of resulted in an unintended turn. But then finally now, people has come to aware that the threat imposed by the China's Communist Party. So it's not too late now. So now, first of all, we share the common values, and then so all the people should create a more strong solidarity to fight against this communist party and communist regime. And then amongst the democracies, including the United States, UK, Japan, and other advanced democratic countries should come together more strongly and impose more stronger, much stronger economic sanctions against China, which is critical because now China become such an economic power, and then after joining the WTC, it's the Chinese economy advanced rapidly, but the human rights or the rule of laws are not totally respected or complied at all, and particularly their values are totally different from our shared common values amongst us. So today we have those, gathered together in Japan from all over the world. So we should leverage this opportunity to push more the pressure on China.
I think we are short on time. Okay, so we'll pick up one last question from Ambassador Dilipji.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to compliment WPCT for bringing together this panel where there is this common shared values between activists on human rights within mainland China and in regions like Tibet, East Turkestan, southern Mongolia. I had a question, and that is, there's the other community, which is the Manchus, about whom one doesn't hear much. Does anybody in the panel know a little bit more about their fate and their state right now, or are they completely forgotten? This is the Manchus in northeastern China.
Anyone from the panel would like to answer this? This would be the last question.
すいません。私は満州人です。
I am a
中国のハル
Manchu.
ビンの生まれで、
I was
昔
born
の
in
満州
Harbin
国。
in China. It used to be a
なぜかという
Manchuria
と、
as a nation
私
in
は
the past
自分のふる
because
さとを愛しています。
I do love my
残念なが
home
ら、
country,
今
my hometown.
満州、
But
あるいは中
unfortunately,
国東北
currently,
三州はですね、おいではで
Manchuria
すね、
and
他の民族
in
の
the
ジェ
three
ノサイ
provinces
ド
of
と
an
同
east,
じくらいの
north
ひ
in
どさになっていま
China,
す。
the
その中
genocide
に
and atrocity is at
東
the same
北兵
level
から
as in
習
the
近平まで、
other areas
あ
we
るいは習
mentioned.
近平、
So
今
from
唱えているの
Deng Xiaoping
時代の中華民族
up
の復
until
興、
Xi
これは全く嘘ですね。
Jinping, they are talking
中華
about
民族っていうのはそんなに存
happiness
在して
of
ない。
Han people, but that's
そして
sheer lie because
私自身に
Han
も
people
漢民族
as
ではないん
such
です
does
が、
not exist, and I
だ
myself
から
am
漢
not
民族
an
の
Han
中国
person.
の偉大な
So
民族
the
復興
Han
というのは
people and the
それは
restoration
幻
of
の
the
話であって、中国はですね、
Han people
経済に
with
発展によっ
their
て
glory, it's just
そ
an
れで
illusion.
各地の
China
格差を生じてます。
with
その格
along
差
with
によってで
its
すね、
economic
矛
development,
盾が出てき
there
ま
are
す。矛盾によると今度はトラブルが起きます。さらにさら
inside
に
of China, and the
その
disparities
ま
lead
とまっ
to
た方向に
contradictions
発展す
depending
る
on
方
where
向に向かっ
it
てい
is
るわ
in
けではな
China.
く、
So it is
分
not
散されて
the
いく
whole of
ん
the
ですね。
China is
それぞれの民族地
leading
域の自
itself
決、
toward the
独
development.
立、
It is
そして各地方の方
more
は
and more
独立は
disparate, and the
今
self-determination of the
いろ
people
んな形で世界各地で開花されてます。これは今の実情で、満州国
being
の
the
片側
issue in different areas
独立
and
を目指
across
す
the
の人
world
間はです
has
ね、
beyond the
その
China's
2018年ぐらい
border.
で
And in
日本の国会
2018
の
or
中で
so, in the
一回
Diet of
表に
Japan,
出てるんです。
the Manchu
日本社会にもアピール
issue
しました。ただ
was
私はそういった話を
discussed,
支
and
持し
there
ま
was
す。
an appeal made to Japanese people, and I do support that type of discussion.
I
Thank
just
you.
want to raise awareness to you because one Manzhou journalist, his name, a writer, a journalist, his name is Fu Cha, and he married to Taiwanese, so he lived in Taiwan, and he is a writer, editor, very famous, very good one. And he went back to China in 2023, and he was disappeared. Until now, no one knows that where he is, and he was in detention in China. So I just want to wear your attention that to be solidarity about this case. And we right now in Taiwan NGOs, we are trying to help him. So he's a Manzhou people, and but disappeared in China. That's it.
Due to time constraints, we'll have to conclude the session here. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but we can sort of meet with the panelists and continue with the discussions during the tea breaks and lunch breaks. With this, I'd like to thank all our panelists for sharing their stories of lived experiences, lived resistance. Let this not be the end of our conversation, but the start of a deeper coordination, stronger mutual support, and a shared vision of the future. Thank you all for being part of this conversation. Have a great rest of the day. So we have to take photos with our flags at the back, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair and the panelists. We'll begin the next session, session 9. The topic for this session is Pragmatic Solution on Tibet, What World Parliaments Can Do. This session will be chaired by Honorable Els van Hoof, Member of Parliament, Belgium. The panelists will be Honorable Hans Heid, MEP, Austria, Vice President of European Parliamentary Friend of Tibet, Honorable Watanabe Shu, Member of the House of Representatives, Japan, Honorable Vlado Mirushik Verdugo, Member of Chamber of Deputies of Chile, and former President of the Chamber of Deputies of Chile.
Free Tibet! Free Hong Kong! Free East Turkestan! Free Southern Mongolia!
Free Southern Mongolia.
Keep Taiwan free!
Thank you. Thank you very much. We would like to invite the chair and the panelists for the next session, please.
It's well that the conference have a multi-language. So the Belgium.
Hi.
Yes, yes, yes.
Konnichiwa. Good morning. Nice to meet you. Sorry? Okay, we'll do that. Good morning, everyone, dear ministers, dear colleagues, dear friends. We are now in the session on a pragmatic solution on Tibet, what world parliaments can do. Let me begin with the words of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's not enough to be compassionate. You must act. And I think these words capture the spirit of the gathering of today. For parliamentarians, compassion must translate into concrete political action, of course, especially when others are silenced. As parliamentarians, we have the power and the duty to keep Tibet on the agenda, and that's what this session is about. The instruments I use in the Belgian Parliament can be summarized in 3 simple words: agendize, legislate, and influence. Firstly, agendize. In the Belgian Parliament, we regularly have also sessions of written questions, but also oral questions, which raises cases of concern. So recently, I had a question submitted on the suspicious death of senior Tibetan Lama Rinpoche in Vietnam. I was inspired by the Tibetan office in Brussels. These questions do more than just gathering information. They put pressure on our government. They force them to keep the issue alive, and it's a form of political accountability, because they weren't aware about the death of this monk, and they did raise the issue by the embassy in Hanoi, and there will be a bilateral meeting also with Vietnam in which they will raise the question. So it's important that we keep issues alive, and that also that we worry about the death of this monk and what the impact is on our politics. It's very important. Secondly, legislate. An example is my resolution on Taiwan that was adopted by our parliament in March of this year. I had a lot of difficulties with it because it took me 2 years and a half. There was a lot of pressure from the Chinese embassy. I had to convince my coalition partners, but what helps in such cases is also international coordination, and my colleague of the UK referred to IPAC. So, for example, IPAC introduced a model resolution on Taiwan's exclusion from the UN system, and this made it easier for me and for parliamentarians to act, knowing that you are not acting alone and you have support from a big group. So it was one of the 239 bills which has been accepted by the IPAC members. And so you get a lot of support also afterwards, good work, well done, more than you even have in your own parliament. So I'm a big fan and supporter of IPAC because they inspire a lot our work and they do it very well at a high level. So I think it's very important that we have a similar resolution on Tibet. It would be very useful to have that so that we can exchange, and we can also have supporters from this group to do that work and to continue that work, because sometimes you feel very alone also in Parliament. There are not a lot of people which are concerned by the question. I am concerned, but I don't know if there are others. So we have a new Parliament right now. So it would be inspiring to have this coordination for Tibet, not only within IPAC, but maybe within this group also. It was very important to legislate, but also after the elections of last year, I had the opportunity to contribute directly to the drafting of our new government agreement. And during the negotiations, I managed to insert explicit language on Tibet, which is very important for the next 5 years to come. So I quote what I could put in the text: we will continue to raise human rights violations, including those related to the identity of Uyghurs and Tibetans. We emphasize the importance of peace, stability, and the status quo in the Taiwan Strait and the South Chinese Sea. This may seem like a little step, but a single sentence or 2 sentences make a very big difference. They make a world of difference. It's politically significant. It also sets out some benchmarks for our ministers and diplomats. This means very concretely this year, there was a universal periodic review on China, and our country intervened on the basis of this text, and they raised the question about the boarding schools and also about the access of special envoys also to Tibet. And they made also a joint statement with 28 other countries. This didn't happen before, but it's very important that we make our contribution also in governmental agreements. So the third important aspect, I said, there was agendize, there is legislate, but there is also influence. I regularly also receive delegations from Tibet in the Belgian Parliament. Chinese embassy doesn't like that, so every time I do that, I have some reactions. But I think it's very important, but because it creates visibility, there will be some social media posts. And I even was one day summoned by our Speaker of the House because there was a lot of reaction from the Chinese embassy when I was receiving the SICON of the Central Diplomat Administration. So once again, these meetings are not merely symbolic. They have impact, and they make the question of Tibet visible again. So we have to do that. So I'm happy to receive new delegations of ministers, which are already met, or MPs from the Tibetan Parliament-in-Exile. So very important to continue that influence. It has an impact, I must say. Speaking out for Tibet is not without consequence. I've also faced pressure and intimidation. I speak from personal experience. Last year, I was also confirmed that the FBI confirmed that my personal laptop has been hacked by China. I also receive, like you do, regularly threatening letters from the Chinese embassy, especially after visits also to Taiwan. And in those letters, I was, for instance, accused of playing with fire. So let me be clear, luckily, I'm not easily intimidated. I will continue my work. I also come here to Tokyo, no problem for me, like all of you. And nor should any of us be intimidated. I think I will close with the words of an important also Nobel Prize winner, Malala Yousafzai. She said, "When the world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful." I think that's very important. Let us continue to raise our voice through our parliamentary action for Tibet. Thank you. So I have also a lot of colleagues, and I'm interested to hear also, like you, to hear their testimonials of their work in their respective parliaments. I have colleagues of the European Parliament, Japan, and also Chile. And the first one to speak is my dear colleague Hannes Heide. He's an MEP from Austria. He's also vice president of the European Parliamentary Friend of Tibet, and he has been very active, I think in his second period already in the European Parliament, to raise the issue of Tibet. And I'm wondering if you also feel alone, or you have a lot of people which are also supporting you. I give you the floor.
Thank you very much. This is a very special moment for me, because I started my work for Tibet already before I had any political position in the 1990s, and I had no political background, but I did a lot of events, lectures, also concerts and different occasions. And one of the highlights was in 1998, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama visited my hometown, and I was one of the people organizing it and initiating it, and it was an honor and privilege for the whole place. And a year before, I was for the first time of my life in Dharamsala, and I was there 2 years ago, and I saw what has changed within these decades, how the development went on. And it's a privilege for me now, after having been a mayor of my hometown for 12 years, to represent the European Parliament and to be a member of the Friendship Group for Tibet already in the second mandate. And it is a group that is chaired by a colleague from Lithuania, by Dainius Šalimas. And you could hear him yesterday afternoon in a video message. But the intergroup is doing already a work for quite a long time, because it was established in 1989 already, a time where Austria even was not a member of the European Union. And it was re-established in 2014 as a more informal group, as a friendship group, and recently re-established to fulfill two main objectives. One, creating opportunities for informal discussion amongst MEPs who were interested in the situation in Tibet, and secondly, providing information on the subject for the colleagues and the public in general, and encouraging various forms of political actions. And our achievement, either as intergroup, this is more official and formally, and as Tibet Friendship Group, were a lot of resolutions that have been passed in this time. And the Friendship Group contributed to over 50 Tibet-related resolutions in the European Parliament over 3 decades, and addressing issues like religious freedom, forced assimilation, and environmental degradation. We did delegation visits, as I have already managed. MEPs have the opportunity to go to Dharamsala to engage directly with the Tibetan government in exile, as well as with civil society organizations. And we support initiatives like the EU for Tibet campaign, encouraging European election candidates to pledge support for Tibetan causes. Beyond this work as a friendship group, the European Parliament adopted multiple resolutions condemning human rights violation in Tibet, the latest on 8th of May this year. The European Parliament adopted a resolution strongly opposing Chinese interference in the succession of Tibetan Buddhist leaders, including the Dalai Lama, and this resolution included also a condemnation of China's broader assimilation policies and repression of religious freedom in Tibet. It calls for an independent investigation into the suspicious death of Tulku Hunkar Dorje. It reiterates demands for the release of the Panchen Lama, who is one of Tibet's most important religious figures, and it urges European Union institutions to impose targeted sanctions on Chinese officials responsible for human rights abuses in Tibet. And I also want to mention another resolution from December 2023 on the abduction of Tibetan children in boarding schools. So what can the European Parliament do for Tibet in the future? First demand are targeted sanctions. We have to impose sanctions, travel bans, asset freezes on Chinese officials involved in human rights abuses in Tibet, especially related to cultural assimilation and religious repression. And human rights have to be a conditionality in trade. So we want to make respect for Tibetan human rights a precondition for ratifying future EU-China trade agreements. And I want to recall that the EU-China trade agreement, the comprehensive agreement on investment, which was agreed on in 2020 already, has not been ratified yet, also because of pressure from the European Parliament, from members of that House. So what you also call for is an EU special representative on Tibet to advocate for to monitor Tibet's situation and coordinate diplomatic efforts by the European Union. We want to foster and promote parliamentary delegation to Tibetan exile communities. These official visits should be increased to India as well to Nepal, to document testimonies and show solidarity and Tibetan voices in policy making of MPs. And as I mentioned, the friendship group has visited Dharamsala, but also other delegations should mention the case of the human rights situation in China. And I also want to mention that there were 5 members of the European Parliament banned to enter China, and now, through the global situation, China lifted that ban, except one who is no longer a member, and those who were banned are not too happy with the lift of the ban, I also have to mention. So we also want to support international legal action in encouraging and funding legal investigation or cases at international courts addressing China's policies in Tibet. We also want to fund cultural preservation projects via EU programs, to boost Tibetan language, history and cultural heritage projects, and we also demand an annual Tibet human rights report by the European Union. And I myself want to add two points, because my impression was that there is a lot of interest in the topic of the megadams. And I want to mention that we had an informal event within the European Parliament on this matter, and we really had high-profile panel with experts from Tibet. It was initiated by the International Campaign for Tibet, with the help of the Tibet office in Brussels and the International Federation for Human Rights. So there is contact and there is a very good base if any parliamentarian wants to have an event like this and information like this. Please get in contact either with Tibet office in Brussels or with myself. And what I also want to mention, I'm a member of the Committee for Culture in the European Union. This is especially for the Tibetan administration. With TIPA, the Tibetan Institute for Performing Arts, you have great artists, and they should be more and more on tour in European countries. And we as parliamentarians, as friendship groups, should help and support them, that they have a lot of opportunities to perform, because it's a very good advertising for the Tibetan cause. So this is my passionate call on you, and this is a great opportunity. So thank you very much.
Thank you, dear colleague. I think the track record of the European Parliament on what you did for Tibet is really impressive during decades already, as you told. It's also very inspiring for national parliaments. I think European resolutions could be copied also in national parliaments, so I'm always looking forward to that. So I will see if we could do the last resolution also, which you have been accepted also in Parliament during 23, so we will continue to work on that. Thank you also for your personal work and about the conference on hydro dams. You explained also yesterday in our group, which will be also very inspiring to see what we can do also in national parliament. So I hope you continue your work as a vice president also for the friendship group of Tibet. Now I give the floor to Mr. Shu Watanabe. He's member of the House of Representatives of Japan. So thank you for hosting again, Mr. Watanabe, also your colleagues for this conference, which is very inspiring and important also for our work in different national parliaments. You have been elected already 10 times in this parliament, which is very impressive. You have been a Minister of Security and Defense also in other governments. So we would like to hear also your testimony about the work done also for Tibet in this parliament. I give you the floor. Thank you.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and dear colleagues. I'm acting chair of the Japanese Parliamentary Support Group for Tibet. I'm Shu Watanabe. I'm supporting Eriko Yamatani, the chair, president of our group. And then I'd like to make this conference as a great success. And then actually, His Holiness Dalai Lama gave me this kata once. So with this, I would like to do my best to make this conference a great success. So now, here in this international conference room, I'm very delighted to host this WPCT, and once His Holiness Dalai Lama, and also that the Parliamentarian Prime Minister in that the Tibetan government in exile plan to organize in conference here in Japan, but then that the Chinese government and also that the China embassy in Japan weighed in with a great pressure not to organize such a conference. And then in Japan, the parliament is that the supreme institution, and then yet we had to bend into their external pressure. So I was really frustrated, but we decided not to organize such an event, given some consideration to the external political environment. But now I'm so delighted to be able to organize and host this conference, and this the parliamentary conference room. So I really hope that my colleagues, you also be able to organize such an event, like in such a public place, to organize a meeting or discussion on the Tibet situation. That's to show our strong determination and solidarity with Tibet. So, today we have over 130 the parliamentary researchers and activists from 29 countries around the world have gathered here today, and now in the Tibetan authoritarian autonomous region of China, there are concerns about the progress of the policy of assimilation to Han China, including the evaluation of the Tibetan Buddhist faith. Let us renew our solidarity and confirm our solidarity for the preservation of Tibetan culture and identity. Currently, in the autonomous region, Chinese authorities are separating Tibetan children from their families and forcing them to study Chinese in the boarding schools. So, now, in this global era, in the 21st century, still there is such a oppression on the identity, culture, and language for ethnicity as imposed by the Chinese government. It's not acceptable that such a thing happened in this time of the world. And I would like to solidify our solidarity for the Tibet together with you and create even more strong alliance, a bigger alliance with you. And furthermore, a pressing issue is the succession of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, the Supreme Authority of the Tibetan Buddhism, who gave this cutoff to me. There is a concern or fear of the intervention by the Chinese government. He will turn 90 years old on July 6th. Tibet is we shall not allow the Chinese government intervention on this succession issue to His Holy Highness Dalai Lama. So I sincerely hope that the people of Tibet will be able to live with the dignity in Tibet by joining forces with the people of the world who have gathered here this time to continue their support for Tibet. Now, we shall not allow any coercive action by the Chinese government, and we should send out that strong message to the world. That these Tibet people, the Tibetan, as a Tibetan, have the freedom and the right of self-determination to have the freedom and to live in their homeland. We share these fundamental values of freedom, basic human rights, and the rule of law. Let us deepen our solidarity and spread our activities around the world to make the human rights situation in Tibet known to the world. So, this Tibet this Japanese parliamentary support group for the Tibet in Japan consists of the large number of the parliamentary members. But now it's still part of the, we will still hold the parliamentary is deliberated at this moment. So I also have to return to the discussion. I'm sorry that I cannot stay till the end of the discussion, but I'm really looking forward to see you again. And so let us work together for the Tibet. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Watanabe, for your strong determination together with your colleagues for Tibet. Thank you for also countering the pressure of China to organize also this conference. It's a political action in itself to do it in a public space like this. It's very inspiring, and I think these alliances are very important. And as you say, we share the same values of democracy and human rights, and they are under pressure all over the world. We have to continue to make these alliances, and we are very happy that you received us in your beautiful parliament. Thank you for that. Now I give the floor to another dear colleague, Mr. Vlado Mirushik Verdugo. He's member of the Chamber of the Deputies of Chile and former president of the Chamber of Deputies of Chile. He's very active on the subject of Tibet. He's one of the longest, as I've been reading, parliamentary supporters in Latin America. You also had a visit to Dharamsala, and you also met His Holiness the Dalai Lama. So we are happy to hear from you which are your actions that you're doing these days also in Chile. Thank you.
Gracias. Konnichiwa, Tachidelek. Hello, everybody, everyone. I will speak in Spanish because it's my native language. Lo primero es agradecer a nuestros colegas de Japón por organizar este encuentro aquí en Tokio. Agradecer también a Jinmei y Serin por la invitación, el representante del Dalai Lama en América Latina, un gran amigo con quien tenemos una relación muy estrecha. Vengo de América Latina.
I'm very happy to be able to be here. I came from Latin America. Latin America continent, you can imagine, right? People's lives there are very enjoyable. That's what you assume, right? And very big land there. There's no conflict there. That's what you would assume, I believe. However, well, on this continent, we have a lot of compassion and friendship. It's a great continent. That's true. But one thing I'd like to say, when I was a child and also my adolescence, and I had an opportunity to meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama for the first time. And after that, I visited Dharamsala and in person, and was able to meet with His Holiness Dalai Lama in person with 2 delegations from Chile back in 10 years ago, well, 15 years ago at the time. And then a totally opposite side, the area to the place where His Holiness is in. But we are completely opposed against separationists. In Gringa, there is a monastery, like my home. I was able to visit the monastery there, and I had an opportunity to listen to middle way policy, protecting the tradition of Tibet. That is something that should be respected. That's what I heard. But preserving this position would be very difficult, I think. You are Tibetans, but taking this up policy as midway, it was not an easy decision. And His Holiness, the Government-in-Exile and other organizations have been separated with some pragmatic view. And many, we have to support on a global scale to this idea.
Pero sin embargo, con una economía abierta al mundo, es un país que tiene una alta dependencia de la economía china.
Are independent from China economically, we shouldn't follow China's economic potential, and also there are a lot of mines, including copper. So in this situation, under the influence that we cannot avoid getting the influence economically from China, but as a parliament member, we had an opportunity to have exchanges. As I mentioned earlier, 2016, I had a chance to talk with His Holiness Dalai Lama, and we had a lot of dialogues on many issues. One is to maintain autonomy as Tibetans, And the policy to support the idea is great, but on the other hand, this is very pragmatic policy. That's what I thought. And also, freedom of religion is no oppression accepted. And also, assimilation policy, for example, and people are forced to speak Chinese, Mandarin. That's what I heard. Also, infringement of human rights, we heard. And also, assimilation policy, and under the assimilation policy, giving the education based on the assimilation policy, that is not acceptable. So, this very authoritarian approaches by China, we need to fight against that. To that end, we need to cooperate each other. That is the only way we can do for us.
Y en donde nuestros gobiernos dependen mucho de China a nivel del comercio exterior. Por lo tanto, si no lo hacemos nosotros, no lo va a hacer nadie.
We may not have such a great economic potential and power, but we shouldn't be a bystander.
Que su santidad no es separatista.
Therefore,
su santidad es autonomista.
His Holiness Dalai Lama is no separationist.
Absolutamente fundada.
He supports middle way policy. It's an autonomy.
Son abusos que no tienen ninguna justificación por parte de China. Y ellos no pueden pretender que el resto del mundo no se preocupe por aquello.
Chinese exercising power excessively. We want to fight against that. So we need to focus on, which is infringement of human rights or taking religion away from Tibetans. The peaceful ethnic group that shouldn't be accepted. So, for that, His Holiness Dalai Lama delegated his power. He wants to create a democratic government. He made a decision on that as well. And another point, changing the name of Tibet, I cannot support this idea at all. What does it mean? What would be the implication of changing the name of our country? I have no intention to counter against China, but my point is this middle way policy, please, we expect China to understand this policy, middle way policy, asking for autonomy, respecting dignity. That is something that we want to call for China. I have no intention to fight against China at all, but
pero esa cercanía espiritual de ese primer libro que me regaló mi hermano hace muchos años no está sujeta a la presión de ningún gobierno. Las creencias personales y sobre esas creencias no creo que no tengo que rendir ningún examen a ningún gobierno. Y los parlamentarios tenemos la libertad de hacer eso. No todos lo tienen. No todos se atreven a utilizar esa libertad, además. Pero los parlamentarios somos los primeros llamados a hacerlo. En Chile lo hemos hecho a nuestra manera.
So, as a politician, parliament members, let's fight for human rights. And this has been discussed in Diet members, and we need to call for solidarity. I need to finish my presentation, but for example, our concern is a very serious one. What's going on in Tibet, infringement of human rights, which is very serious, and also damaging the moral sense is something that we need to raise our voice. We have started one step ahead, which is significant, and middle way policy. This is very important. So this middle way is very difficult decision to choose. You need to give up something, but still, we need to support, continue to support that policy and supporting them to move forward with this middle way policy. That's what we promised to His Holiness Dalai Lama in the discussion with him. Fighting against China is not we intend to do, rather for we're calling for dignity for Tibetans or people in Tibet. That's what we are calling for China to accept.
Thank you for your strong
ありがとうございました。
testimony
大
also
変
of your meeting with His
力強い
Holiness, the Dalai
証
Lama,
言、
which
そして
was
ダライラマ法
very
と実際に
inspiring for you personally, but also for your political work. And as you said, it's not against China that we work, but we work for freedom of culture, expression, and also religion. And we choose for the middle way, as you confessed also. It's very important because these are common goods. We are not working against China, but we believe in common goods as human rights, as democracy, as the rule of law, and that's what we are all also are fighting for. We have some little time, I suppose, for some questions. Yes. Give you the floor.
Thank you very much for this very intriguing panel discussion, dear colleagues. I'm Kathleen Cseh, Liberal MP from Hungary, and I just want to add a few points. I am very glad that we are having this conversation on what we can do as parliamentarians, and I fully agree with some of the speakers who mentioned the economic aspects. Because I think it's very hard or impossible to separate the human rights conversation from the economic conversation. Because even if we raise the problems and sufferings of the Uyghurs, of the Tibetans, of all oppressed minorities in China, very often, let's face it, the response we get from our governments or from the European Commission or from anybody who is having the possibility to act is silence or just a comment that, yes, we are worried, but we need the trade, we need the loans, there is this infrastructure project going on, we need to keep that alive. So what is going on, unfortunately, is that the PRC is buying our silence and complacency with cheap loans, with unfavorable investments, and with FDI. And this is also our fault, because we are not doing more as democracies to invest in trade and cooperation with other democracies. And as I am just perceiving the direction the world is going with the more and more nationalistic approaches of many large countries, we are just opening up the space for repressive countries to fill it. So I think that's also our job as parliamentarians, to advocate for more trade, more values-based partnership, for the upholding of multilateral relationships, which could provide economic incentives also for actions for human rights. Because it's very hard to talk about values, but not talk about the day-to-day realities of so many countries. And I'm saying that coming from a country where, unfortunately, the allegiance between the acting leadership is closer than this. We are actually, my government is actually signing an agreement with China to allow the patrolling of the PRC police officers on the streets of Hungary. But we should not wait until the situation gets this bad at so many other points of the world. So this is also our duty to push for values-based trade and for more cooperation and partnership. So I'm really hoping that we can also continue the conversation around that as well, because that's one of the fundamentals, I believe.
Thank you for your interesting question. I don't know who wants to respond on it, but I know that also European Union used with also Commissioner von der Leyen the fact that China is a systemic rival, also a partner and a competitor. So we use the three phrases always when we talk about China. Maybe you can...
No, I only want to add that the whole European Commission will visit China shortly.
Yes. So they don't use that phrase anymore in their...
Let's see what's
okay, yeah.
how they finish this.
Yeah, it's a big challenge we all face, but that we are also here because we know that we want to confess about our value-based trade, and that's what I repeat also in my parliamentary work again and again. And also our government visited China, but they raised the question of human rights in a bilateral context also with Xi Jinping. It wasn't in the open, but they did, I know. So that's very important that we continue to say that human rights are our common goods and very, very important. But I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, maybe it's an opportunity because it's China that reaches out to the European Union because of the global situation and to look for a partnership. And on the other hand, we of course could promote and bring into the debate the human rights situation more strongly than before.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I just rose to remark out of the interest and the attention that I got from the very topic amongst the others, because the topic seems to be very, very interesting among the others. As a member of parliament myself in exile, I always have this feeling that how the parliament members around the world are going to take on the issue of Tibet, given the risks involved, giving the sacrifice that you have to make. Obviously, you won't be able to go to China so easily having attended this conference. So I feel that what the individual parliament members, particularly who have interests and who have also taken a keen interest on the issue of Tibet, and particularly attended not just this conference, but other conferences as well, and in the future as well, individual parliament members can do. And then what collectively you can do by raising issues on the parliament, speaking up on the issues of parliament, passing the motions, and collectively introducing the bills. And then at the same time, you can have a WhatsApp group where you can give all your numbers today on a piece of paper, and then we can have an informal group where you will know a lot about Tibet issues from the CTA's officers, and then keep updated about it. I will stop there because my time is up. Thank you so much.
Time's up, yes. That's what I'm reading. But it's a good suggestion to maybe make a signal group to also exchange on what we are doing on our different parliaments, because that's important, because it motivates us, and even if it is difficult, because we see what is changing also in the United States, it has impact on what China is doing to our governments. I already had a visit also of the Chinese ambassador. It's a new one. And they lift the bans, I know, but what they also do is charming offensive. They use another language. They use a more open language to our parliaments, but also at that moment our speech has to have to be open, and we have to talk about Tibet, we have to talk about the Uyghur, and we have to talk about Taiwan and Hong Kong. And I also did it, and then he said, I want to invite you. I said, no, I won't go to your country because you only show what you want me to see. So it's also a difficult trap that we are getting in. But I think the best thing we can do is talk openly to them and not hide us, what we do also today. And thank you to the panelists also for your interesting interventions. And we continue also our work in our national parliaments. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We would like to thank the chair and the panelists. We will now break for the tea and resume the next session at 11:35 a.m.